Hi, this is Imre Galambos, Professor of Chinese at the University of Cambridge. And this video is about online sources in your research, about the advantages of using online material, and also about the inevitable problems that are associated with using this kind of material. There's certainly a delicate balance between being able to access material digitally in a convenient form and the need to maintain academic rigor in research. You may wonder whether it's even okay to cite online material in your research paper, whether it's enough to find an online version of a book or an article, or it's always preferable to find a printed edition. If this is something you're interested in, keep watching. But before that, please hit the subscribe and like buttons to help the channel and to be notified when new material comes online. Today, the internet is a basic part of our life, whether we're at home, in school, in libraries, even on a train or on the street. It is omnipresent to the extent that we usually only pay attention to it when something goes wrong and we are no longer able to get online. It is really all around us, and most of us spend a significant amount of our lives in the digital realm. Needless to say, this has brought major changes to the way we do research. In the past, you may have had to travel to a different city and work your way through complex registration processes just to access some material in an archive or library. Today, these kind of things may be accomplished in a matter of minutes just by searching on the internet. And often you find a lot more than what you searched for. You may find additional leads that take you in new directions, or come across contact details of library personnel who are in charge of the material you want to look at. And all this without leaving the comfort of your desk, and in many cases there's even no desk or no computer. This means that we're able to find material quicker and easier, and all this is of course wonderful. But at the same time, we also often run into problems when we try to validate the material, or when we try to cite it properly as a source. Because can you cite an anonymous article on a blog if it has not been maintained for the past 6 years? Or the one that does not even have a date on it? Of course, there are various techie hacks to find the date of a page, but even that is not exact because it does not tell you how the page has been updated for the past few years. The same for sites like Wikipedia. Who's the author of the entry? What is its date? And then there is of course the issue of the page continuously growing. And what you cite today may be different from what somebody in the future will be looking at, even if that person is looking at the page because he or she is trying to track down a source you mentioned. Most of the content from 25 years ago on sites such as Netscape or Yahoo has disappeared altogether, and so references to them now lead into the void. So what can we do? Basically, when teaching, we encourage students to rely on printed sources. This is of course different if the research project itself is web-based, and so all the material is on the internet. But as a general rule, in academic writing, you need to refer to sources in an exact way, so that people who read your article may go back and look at the same sources. This immediately makes sites such as Yahoo or Wikipedia problematic, because they change. And also because the information they contain may not actually be accurate. It may be, but it's quite often not. And you don't know which ones are the ones that are accurate, and so they are not good enough to be cited as a source in an academic article. So let's look at 3 sources commonly relied on and cited in academic papers. Number 1 is primary sources. This might be different for other languages, but in English language academia, you need to cite a specific edition of a primary text, including the date, publisher, place of publication, and of course the page numbers. But when you find your text on the internet, it often just appears as online content without page numbers or publication details. You don't know who put it there. You don't know if it was typed by someone and on the basis of what, or it was scanned and OCR'd and whether somebody even checked it afterwards. So you don't know how accurate the text is, and there's often no information about its ultimate source. This is obviously not something you can cite. Instead, you need a printed edition with all the bibliographical data. But what if you find a PDF of the printed edition? Would that work? Well, technically, the PDF would be a scanned copy of the original and would retain all the information you need, which means that you can find everything you need to cite the text. That it is an image also means that you can verify the text in that edition. You can look what's actually written in the printed edition. So it's perfectly adequate to cite it as a source. But when you do, you should of course cite the pages of the printed edition and not those of the PDF. But not all PDFs are equal, because some of them are not scanned copies of printed editions, but simply a copy of a digital text. Essentially, they take a text of unknown provenance and then save it as a PDF document. The same goes for ebook and Kindle versions of a text, which are once again not suitable because they do not have fixed page numbers and layout. For academic writing, you need proper page numbers. This may change in the future, but for now this is the common practice. Actually, the point is not whether something is a PDF or not, but whether you can look at the original printed edition. So if you have scanned JPEGs of a book, you can look at the original, even though you're looking at it through your computer screen. Some of the primary sources will be manuscripts, including letters and diaries of historical figures, and these again need to be cited as physical documents. You need to consult the originals, whether by going through the library or as images on your computer screen. Alternatively, you can also look at the properly printed edition of these. What you should not do is to directly cite the content of the letters from a blog post or online article. Category number 2 is secondary scholarship. Here again, you need to cite the exact publication details and page numbers. And as basic methodology, you need to have seen the original publication. An HTML copy of the article on a website does not work because it does not have page numbers and the layout of the original is also gone. But a PDF copy of the original article works perfectly fine because you're looking at an exact copy, a scan that is, or perhaps the original typeset version of the article prepared by the journal. And this is, in fact, the most common way of looking at academic articles today. We no longer go to the library to find a 1963 volume of a journal, unless, of course, the journal is not available online. If it is, then we would almost always prefer the PDF version, because it's so much more convenient, and it works just as well from the point of view of academic rigor, while being much more efficient to handle than old copies of journal issues. Category number 3 is dictionaries. Dictionaries are extremely popular on the web, but they can also be problematic. If you need to look at an old dictionary that dates to, say, the 16th century, you need to go to the library and find a copy of that. Alternatively, you can also look on Google Books or archive.org to find a digital copy of that dictionary, which is perfectly fine to cite. And again, you need to refer to the page numbers of the book, not the PDF. You may also be able to find a modern edition, but then again, you need to see the original or a PDF version of that. Modern dictionaries can be a little bit different because the companies often maintain their own website. So the Oxford English Dictionary has its own website, and so does Merriam-Webster. The company that maintains the website lays extra emphasis on the accuracy of their data, which is therefore free of typos, omissions, and other kinds of mistakes. Thus, such websites are essentially equivalent to printed editions, and so there's no problem with citing them in academic publications. But in some cases, a dictionary that dates from a few decades ago is put online by someone for the sake of convenience and out of service for the community. But it is not really owned by an author or a publisher, and so such dictionaries often contain a host of mistakes, and you cannot rely on them as a source. Sure, you can use them to look up things, but if you need to cite something, you need to go back to the original publication and cite that, or find a PDF with scanned images. And then there are also dictionaries that are online by default. They've never had a printed edition, and so you have to cite them directly as online sources. This would not actually be a compromise, but a proper way of citing a source. So these are the 3 categories of sources most commonly cited in academic papers. It is clear that our lives are changing at breakneck speed, and we're moving rapidly in the direction of digital data. So academic practices will certainly change to accommodate the new ways in which data is consumed. But I don't think this will happen through relaxing the standards of scholarship. Instead, this will probably happen by devising better ways of capturing the required information digitally, by providing better mechanisms to reference sources that change over time, and by assigning authorship of digital information in a more transparent way. Okay. I would actually be very interested in what you think about this subject, and whether you think we should change the way we cite information. So let me know if you have any comments. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.